Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 3 of The Big Four, presented by the Tackle Talk podcast. This 4-part series takes a look behind the scenes at 4 of the largest parent companies in fishing tackle who collectively own and control over 80 of the biggest brands in baits, rods, reels, line, and accessories. Today's guest is the Vice President of Brand Management at PRADCO Outdoor Brands, Chad Werner. Episode 3 of The Big Four, presented by the Tackle Talk podcast, starts right now.
Hello, everybody. I'm Bill Dance, and you're listening to Tackle Talk.
This is the Tackle Talk podcast, brought to you by The Rod Locker. Premium gear and expert advice from a staff you can trust. Now, here's your host, Andrew Hayes.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the 3rd episode of this very special mini-series here at the Tackle Talk podcast, and we'll get into this great episode here in just a second, but first, just like last week, just like the week before that, we're going to thank our great partners here at Tackle Talk right off the bat at the beginning of the show so that once we start the conversation with Chad, you can listen to that whole conversation completely uninterrupted. I don't want to have breaks in these conversations and kind of knock off the flow a little bit there. So once the episode starts and that conversation gets rolling, there will be no interruptions till the very end, which means we're going to thank our great partners right now. So first, we have to give a big thank you to our title sponsor, The Rod Locker. The Rod Locker is an incredible family-owned tackle shop located in Evansville, Indiana, that blends the selection and pricing of a big box store with the impeccable service and level of care that you get from your small-town tackle shop. Chad, Brian, Hans, Jacob, everybody over at the Rod Locker is incredible. No matter what you have questions about, if you're looking for a particular model of a rod or reel, or you have a question about a bait, they are there to help. And not only do they have an incredible selection of new rods and reels, they also have the internet's best selection of lightly used rods and reels as well from all of your favorite brands at killer prices. They also have a simple trade-in program where you can turn your old gear into new gear. And if you mention the Tackle Talk podcast on your trade-in submission, you get an extra 10% boost on the value of your trade-in just for listening to Tackle Talk. All that, and you get an extra 5% off your order by using code TACKLETALKJUNE. Now, if you're listening to this in a different month, it's Tackle Talk, and then whatever month that you're currently in. Right now, as we are releasing these episodes, it is June. So the code is going to be TACKLETALKJUNE at checkout for an extra 5% off basically everything on the website. So go check them out over at www.rodlocker.com and use code TACKLETALKJUNE. All right, next up, we have to thank the battery company that powers the Tackle Talk podcast, Amped Outdoors. And the staff and product quality over at Amped Outdoors are just flat out better than any battery company that I've ever dealt with. Their pricing is insanely affordable for the quality product that you're getting. My batteries that I use are like half the price of the batteries that I used to use a few years ago from another company. And truthfully, I like these Amped Outdoors batteries better. They have better tech. They're waterproof. Their larger batteries come standard with Bluetooth monitoring on your phone and heated charging and a 10-year no-hassle warranty handled by a great staff in Hudson, Wisconsin. Also, it's the little things like case quality, their handles, those little differences that make a battery so special. Amped Outdoors does it right. So whether you're looking for a 12-volt, 24-volt, or 36-volt battery for your trolling motor, your graphs, your live sonar, ice fishing, anything that you could need power for while you're fishing, Amped Outdoors has you covered. So go check them out over at www.ampedoutdoors.com. And finally, we have to thank the great team over at Humminbird and Minn Kota. Now, both of these brands on their own produce some of the most impressive electronics and motors in the fishing industry, but together, it's a whole different ballgame. Humminbird and Minn Kota are meticulously designed and manufactured to work in sync to help you get the most out of your boat and your kayak rig. So things like advanced GPS navigation that allows your Humminbird unit and mapping to communicate with your trolling motor, because then you can use features like autopilot, backtrack, circle mode, cruise control, drift mode, dodge mode, and a ton more options there. And those features allow you, the angler, to actually focus on fishing more so than precise navigation. And in turn, that helps you put more fish in the boat. You also have mega down and mega side imaging compatibility with certain units, eliminating the need for additional transducers and mounting brackets and just providing you with better control over your sonar. And all that just scratches the surface of all of the benefits of running both Minn Kota and Humminbird together. So for more information about Humminbird and Minn Kota, you can head over to www.humminbird.com or minnkotamotors.com today. Okay, everybody, like I said, welcome back to a very special production here at the Tackle Talk podcast as we get ready to dive in to episode 3 of the Big Four. And just like we did last week, we kind of shortened the intro a little bit because at this point you have heard the premise of this series multiple times. You've listened to episode 1 and 2, so you get it, right? We're getting a behind the scenes look and getting kind of exclusive interviews with executives at the 4 biggest parent companies in bass fishing tackle. That, of course, is GSM, Pure Fishing, Rapala VMC, and PRADCO. And up to this point, we have had our conversation with GSM and the vice president of fishing over there, Crispin Powley. And that was an awesome episode. Your feedback from episode 1 was exactly what I wanted from this series, which was, wow, I didn't realize that a giant company like that and a company that I had heard so many things about in GSM and the way the internet talks about them. And then you get to hear from Crispin and you're like, wow, it's a normal person, very down to earth, seems like he cares a lot. That's what I wanted this series to be, was kind of a look the other way, right? And for you to see the other side of things. And I think Crispin started us off very well in this series by doing that. And then we moved to Travis Tuma, the president of Rapala VMC USA. That was an awesome conversation as well. And you start to see some differences between these parent companies. You saw someone like GSM, who is in very aggressive acquisition mode at this time. And then you have someone like Rapala, who took a slightly different approach and said, hey, it's more of a slow growth. We've been around for a long time, but also we want to keep this clear separation between our brands. We want one rod and reel brand in 13 Fishing. We want one hook brand in VMC. We want one, jig and wire bait company in Terminator. We want one big bait company in Rapala, and then you kind of have like a subset there with Storm that has its own thing going on. But same thing, you have one line company in Suffolk. So they have a very different approach than someone like a GSM, and it's cool to see both of those worlds. And that sets us up really well for episode 3 today. And this is a very fun one because we get to sit down and chat with the vice president of brand management at PRADCO, Chad Warner. And PRADCO is a little different beast than the other 2 that we've talked about so far, and the one that we will talk about in episode 4 as well, for a few reasons. One, they just have more brands under their watch than any of the other 4, at least when it comes to bait brands. I mean, when you want to think of the brands of baits that are under the PRADCO umbrella, you have Rebel, Booyah, Lindy, Bomber, Yum, Cotton Cordell, Little Joe, Creek Chub, Bandit Lures, Heddon, Thrill, Bomber Lures, Smithwick, Arbogast, Norman Lures, War Eagle Spinnerbaits, Bobby Garland, Gene LaRue, Great Lakes Finesse, and more, all under the PRADCO family. And that means I think it's like 21 brands that I know of at least that are with PRADCO. I'm sure there might be more, but that's the number that I can count at least that I know of. It is a huge family of brands that they own. Another interesting note for PRADCO is the history of their brands. There's a lot of names on that list. Arbogast, Heddon, Bomber, Norman, Cotton Cordell, Rebel. There is so much history with those brands, and they have a lot more established, mature, kind of old school brands, in addition to having some trendier brands like Yum and Booyah and Great Lakes Finesse and those types as well. And then third, I think the big difference here for PRADCO is that in this series, you hear the term private equity get thrown around a lot, and rightfully so, right? But PRADCO is at least a little bit different. PRADCO, from what I know, is, I think, owned by EBSCO Industries, which is a privately held, family-owned conglomerate that's out there in Birmingham, Alabama. So there's still a lot of money behind PRADCO, but there's a little bit more of a family, privately owned feel to them. And that's an interesting point when discussing PRADCO compared to the other 3 in this series that are more of your traditional kind of big money, private equity, especially when you think of somebody like Pure Fishing or GSM that are like a little bit more stereotypical PE plays there. And then the other thing I want to mention here really fast before we get into the episode is you're starting to see another trend in this series where I want to start switching up the conversations a little bit, because truthfully, it would get pretty boring if we had the same conversation over and over again with 4 different companies. So today is a cool look into the brand side of things with Chad. We're going to focus a lot more about the individual brand identities, protecting those identities, being a good steward of history while still pushing forward. How do they balance those challenges? How do you approach product development for such a history-rich brand like Headin? And how is that different than trying to develop products for Yum, which is a lot more of a modern brand? And then you look at all of these individual brands. What purpose do they think that each of these brands serves? And how hard is it to kind of separate that sort of natural grouping that happens and tends to exist within Pradco? And how do you keep all of these brands separate with their own identities? Like, that's the interesting thing to me as you look at this list of 21 brands that Pradco has. And those are some of the questions that we're going to ask Chad today. So you can see at this point, we have had a president from Rapala VMC USA. We've had a vice president of fishing from GSM. Now we have a vice president of brand management from Pradco. So you can start to see how we're kind of beginning to change the conversation a little bit to keep this fresh and get a wide difference of viewpoints and not just talk to 4 presidents or 4 CEOs, because even though they are different companies and they approach things very differently, you would start to see some redundancy in those conversations. And I really want to keep these fresh and cool and have kind of a different angle to each of these episodes. So I think we do a great job of that today. Episode 3 is a fun one. Pradco, like I said, is just a little bit different beast than some of the others in this series, and you're going to see that a little bit today. And with that, let's jump right into episode 3 of the Big Four with the Vice President of Brand Management for Pradco Outdoor Brands, Mr. Chad Warner. All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we are joined by Chad Warner, Vice President of Brand Management over at Pradco. Chad, thank you so much for stopping by Tackle Talk today.
Hey, man. Glad to be here, buddy.
So I do appreciate you stopping by, because I am excited for this episode specifically. I really like Pradco. I think you guys are one of the, if not probably the most unique of like the big dog parent companies in fishing right now. And we'll get to a lot of that in a few minutes on what makes you guys unique and why I think that's so cool. But before we get started here, can you give us just like a Cliff's Notes version of your background, like how you got to be Vice President of Brand Management at Pradco and how you ended up here over the past couple years?
Yeah, for sure. So I started in 2015, and I've got a really cool story on how I started with the company. I can share that, but it might be a little bit long. But I tell this story to people, like when I do discussions or talks. Maybe I'm at a school or I'm talking to a group of fishing high school kids or college kids, and so I got this gig just by being nice. I mean, and that's kind of the way it works out. And I spent about, before coming to Pradco, I spent about 15 years in the drug retail industry. And I was at a store location, and I was at the front. I was working with the store manager. I was in retail operations, and this gentleman walked in the door at the front, and I said hello to him. He said hi back, and I'm like, "Hey man, you need some help with anything?" And he was like, "No, I'm just going to the pharmacy." And I said, "Hey, before you go back to the pharmacy, I got a question for you." This is a big dude, by the way, okay? So he's like 6'3", 6'4", about 250, a big dude. He played college football, ended up finding out. And I'm like, "Hey, man," I'm like, "what in the world are you doing wearing a Lindy shirt in Arkansas?" We were in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And this cat's got a Lindy sweatshirt on.
That's awesome.
And I'm in a suit and tie, clean shaven, just looking mint. And he literally looks me from head to toe. And he looks at me and he's like, "What do you know about fishing?" And I laughed, and I'm like, "Man, I tell you what, I know enough about fishing that we don't fish with Lindy in Arkansas." And he laughed, and he's like, we talked for a few seconds. He's like, "Hey, I actually work for Pradco. It's right down the street." And anyway, we talked, and he left. After that, he left. And so I continued on there and did my work for that day. Well, about 3 or 4 months later, I'm in the line at the bank, and a guy taps me on the shoulder, and I turn around, and here's this dude behind me. And I'm like, what, do you follow me around now? And he laughed, and we talked again. And I took that opportunity to hand him my business card. I'm like, hey, if you got an opportunity that would fit my skill set, I'd be interested in talking to you. Because I knew he worked for Pradco. We talked a lot. And he's like, yeah, sure. He'd set my card. And man, honestly, Andrew, I never thought anything else about it. About 8 or 9 months later, he sends me an email. He's like, hey, you want to come to the Classic with us? And I'm like, the Bassmaster Classic? and mind you, I've fished since I was like 4, dude, forever, tournament fish. And I'm like, yeah, I want to go to the Classic. Are you kidding me? He's like, man, we'll pay for everything. We'll pay for your expenses. He's like, just come join us at the booth. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a no-brainer. So I ended up going to join him with a booth. I think it was probably a job interview. Anyway, we come back, and man, time goes by. We stay in touch, little did I know, he was waiting for the right time. He called me and said, hey, one day, it was like in August, or I don't know, sometime in 15, and said, hey, I got an opportunity for you. You interested? And I'm like, yeah, let's meet for lunch. So I tell that story. That's how I came to Pradco, just by saying hello to a gentleman walking in a store, just by being nice. So that's how I come to Pradco in 15. And I started as a brand manager. I ran Booyah and Yum, and eventually War Eagle and Norman, and made it through that, did a pretty good job at that, obviously. And then I transitioned into product manager, to where I pretty much was over all the product and continued the marketing side of things, the brand kind of side of things. And then an opportunity come up and to take a larger role as the VP of brand management. So I run the marketing department, the brand team, and the new product development team. So that's what I do now.
That's a cool story. So many people should hear that message, because everybody always thinks like, oh, to get a job or to get your dream job or whatever, it's like, it's an application and yes or no, you get it. It's like so much stuff is a long game. It's like who you know, who you stay in touch with. Again, it's not even necessarily the skill set, because so much of that stuff can be taught. It's just, do you have the intangibles? Like, are you likable? Can you hold a conversation? Do you, put yourself out there a little bit? Like all that stuff. I work in sales for my day job. I feel like every single person should have to work in sales at some point in their life, because all it does is just teach you how to communicate with other humans effectively. And like, you can take that to any other career or anything else you want to do in life. So that's a cool story.
Yeah, see, I see the same thing about retail. Everybody should be required to work in retail at some point in their life, because you learn such good tools: communication, problem solving, altercation issues, and handling. I mean, there's so many tools that you learn. So yeah, that's cool. So that's my story.
I do love that you were in the drug industry before that. So when we say like the tug is the drug in fishing, you've been on both sides of that, I guess.
I've been on both sides of it, my man. You betcha. Yes.
That's awesome. So the Pradco family itself, I think this is really interesting. I'm excited for today's episode, because if you look down the Pradco family of brands, you've got, I'll read the list here: Rebel, Booyah, Lindy, Bomber, Yum, Cotton Cordell, Creek Chub. You've got Bandit Lures, Headin, Smithwick. You've got Arbogast, Norman Lures, War Eagle, Bobby Garland, Jean LaRue, Great Lakes Finesse as of recently. So like, there's so many brands that are under that umbrella that you have, and there's so much history there. Like, I think that's what makes Pradco so cool, is there's a lot of bass fishing lore in some of those names, in the Rebels of the world, the Bandits, the Cotton Cordells with the big O, and the Arbogast and the Jitterbugs and everything. Like, you have so many of those, I guess you could call them timeless, kind of like OG companies in the Pradco family. So on that side of things, like those historical brands that are under your watch, how do you approach that? Because I have to imagine the keeping of the brand and the product development and everything looks very different for a Rebel than it does for like a Booyah, for instance.
Yeah, for sure. We're very fortunate to have a series of brands that covers multiple species. And I think that's part of what our success and how our success has been, is that we don't isolate ourselves to the bass category or the walleye category, the crappie. We're very diverse, and that leads to success. So, but some of those more iconic brands like Heddon, I'll take for example, which is the oldest fishing lure company in the world. We've got such a staple set of brands, and with Heddon, you've got baits like the Spook, the Spit and Image, that are staples in pretty much everybody's tackle box. So each brand is looked at differently. We have a brand guide and a brand identity that we use. So that way, if we're training internally or we're working with an external partner, whether that may be a customer or maybe a marketing team that's external, they understand the expectation of the brand and kind of how we manage that brand internally and what the look, the feel, the sound of that brand is. So that's extremely important for us, especially with some of those older heritage brands, that we want to maintain that heritage and that legacy, although we're still bringing new products in those brands, but the feel has to remain the same.
So when you look at like that list of brands, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like just me as a regular angler, when I look at those, there's like some natural like segmentation or grouping that happens when you look at those brands. Like I think if you look at brands like Norman and, Bandit and Cotton Cordell and, Bomber, you have these kind of like, again, legacy is a good way to put it, but they're like crankbait heavy. So you have those type of brands. Then you have the Rebels, the Arbogast, the Heddens of the world that are more like old school topwater heavy. And then you've got brands that I would almost call like more, this isn't gonna be the right word, but like modern or trendier brands. You have like your War Eagles, your Booyahs, your Yum, now Great Lakes Finesse. As a VP of brand management, do you see it that way sometimes? Like, do you see how there's almost like these little cliques or niches of some of the brands that you have under your control? And then on the flip side of that, I guess, do you have to fight that sometimes because some of those brands do kind of want to hang out together a little bit? And you're like, no, you each have to have kind of your own identity, and we do have to create this separation.
Yeah, we're very strategic in how we handle that. As you mentioned, Bomber, Norman, Bandit, heavy crankbait, heavy hard bait, and so we want to categorize those and make sure that we're calling out those specific niches within those two brands. And I'll take Bandit and Norman, for example. So Norman's an iconic older crankbait. It's traditionally all burette makeup plastic, meaning that the process of that bait when building it is different. The sound is different that you get from a burette bait versus a polycarbonate or an ABS. And so we want to call out that piece of Norman so that angler understands, or the consumer understands, hey, you're getting something different within this brand. Bandit is another calling card, another phenomenal crankbait here in the Southeast. And we want to isolate that brand too and call out those small niches where Bandit specifically, it's part walleye as well. I mean, we've got the number one selling walleye bait in the Midwest with the Bandit Walleye Deep. And so we have to market that and brand that accordingly. So yeah, we do fight that, and we try to keep those brands from cannibalizing each other on the peg as it makes sense. So when you look at competition, man, it continues to get stronger and stronger as far as competition. So we're very conscious of that and how we manage those brands. And then when we look at things that we're potentially going to buy, say an acquisition, we take that into consideration as well. Is this going to cannibalize one of our current brands, or is it going to cause it pain? So we take that into consideration as well. But definitely there is certain silos that we put brands in based on, the feel, the guide, the brand identity, or just what type of bait or brand that it is.
So obviously this is Tackle Talk, bass fishing podcast. We're very bass heavy. So I want to go down some of the brands in that portfolio. And I just want, like, even if it's a couple words, just like what you consider the brand identity of each of these kind of like sub brands that you guys have. So if we want to go like Yum, when someone brings up Yum, like what is the identity of Yum?
So Yum is our slogan is proven to catch. So our tagline, proven to catch. So Yum is an opening price point brand. We categorize Yum as, yes, the elite guys use it 100%, but it's for the everyday guy, man. It's for the guy that goes fishing. They fish the pond on the weekend. The ranch hand that's on his side-by-side checking cows. And they've got a Yum dinger tied on their spinning rod. When they cruise by the pond, they're going to go catch a fish in it. It's for the creek wader, the angler that fishes the creek, because we've got a Hellgrammite. We've got multiple baits that's going to catch fish in a creek. It's a multi-purpose brand that everybody can afford.
Yeah, if I had $1 for every Christy crawl and dinger fish that I've caught, I wouldn't have to go to work tomorrow.
100%. Yeah.
So if we go down the list here, what about Booyah?
Yeah, so Booyah is more of our tagline in Booyah is here for one thing. We want Booyah to be aggressive. We look at Booyah as an aggressive angler brand, meaning tournament angler, weekend warrior, the guy that's out fishing tournaments on the weekend, the elite level professional. We want to provide baits and portray that brand as a quality but affordable brand. Take the Covert spinnerbait series, for example. In my opinion, it's one of the, if not the best spinnerbait, dirty water spinnerbait brands on the market. It's extremely durable. From a component perspective, we put top quality components in it. It's got Hildebrandt blades, in which, in my opinion, is the premier blade on the market. And in plus, it is designed by Jason Christie. I mean, arguably one of the best blade throwers ever out. I mean, ever. Like, I'll tell you, when I went into the project, so I built this project with Jason. When I went into this project with him, I was an avid angler, dude. I went into this project. He told me he wanted to bring this spinnerbait to market. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm pretty savvy with spinnerbaits. After we finished this project, Andrew, I went in. I'm like, dude, I'm probably an 8 or 9 from, as far as knowledge and effectiveness with a spinnerbait. I was more like a 4 or a 5 after we got done. Listen, dude, I was blown away with the attention to detail. The things that he considered when he was choosing blade color, blade size, weight, skirt color, trailer. I mean, everything. The dude has it fine-tuned. And we built that spinnerbait and put it out to everybody, where you can go to any retailer of choice and you can go buy that spinnerbait and fish it just like Jason does. Yeah, it's unbelievable, man. It was unbelievable. I learned more in that project probably than any project that I've done in my tenure at PRADCO.
So what's interesting about that, spinnerbaits are a great example of this, where on the surface, they look like they would be such a mundane component build, where it's just like, oh, you got some wire, you got a couple, your blade choice and hook choice, and that's it. And when you sit down with someone like Jason and they actually pick it apart, you're like, there's a lot more nuance to, the shaping of this and angles and blade thickness and wire thickness and what that does. It is cool to see something that seems so simple on the surface turn so complex when you talk to the right person.
It's unbelievable, man. I learned so much. My brother, he's an avid angler too. He loves fishing. And I was telling him about all this stuff. And he just was like myself. We grew up in Oklahoma. It's spinnerbait territory. We're like, man, dude, we're savvy spinnerbait fishermen. No. Jason's just next level. That's why he's on the elites, So yeah, it was super, super cool.
So let's move to one that has a soft spot in my heart, being a Midwestern guy, Smithwick.
Yeah. So
what's Smithwick's place currently in the market?
So Smithwick will never go away from being the OG jerkbait. That's the way it is. Smithwick had a huge run back in the 80s and 90s, put jerkbaiting on the map, and that will never go away. The suspending rattling Rogue, the Pro Rogue, we've brought it back, the 5.5-inch suspending Pro Rogue at Jason Dose. It is a cold water staple. And honestly, dude, I promise you go in most elite guys' boxes and you find their cold water jerkbait box, dude, it's got a Rogue or multiple Rogues in it. It's just one of those baits that'll stand the test of time when it's slow jerkbaiting. It's never going to go away. It actually did a walleye stint in the north. But from a bass bait perspective, dude, the Rogue's hard to beat when that water temperature's cold. And that's where it's going to live. It'll never go away. You might see some new flashy stuff with that coming up in the future, but it'll stay true to his brand for sure, being a jerkbait brand.
Yeah, I just had a couple delivered a couple weeks ago because you guys did some cool paint jobs and paint schemes on some Rogues that I've never seen before. So I got a delivery of those here pretty recently. What about some of the older brands? What about Heddon?
Yeah, so Heddon, again, there's a cool story with Heddon on how the spook come around. We don't have time enough for that, but I should tell that story sometime. But Heddon will remain that anchor in the topwater market as being the premier topwater spook or topwater bait. And you'll see as we look at Heddon and where it's going, literally you can go buy a spook in pretty much any retailer, and that's not going to change. But you will see some advancements as we continue to grow that brand. As much power as the spook has and Heddon has, it will not last forever. You have to incorporate new items, some creativity to that bait, and also bringing new baits. You've got to do that for a brand to continue its relevance within the market. And so Hedden, I mean, it's a staple still, but you'll see as we grow that brand, you'll see some new cool stuff coming for it. But that look and feel of Hedden will always remain the same. That's extremely important for us to keep that branding identity that Hedden has always had.
Well, I still throw a lot of you guys came out with them, I think 4 or 5 years ago, the Boyo, like the kind of stubbier version of it, the Super Spook Boyo that came out. Love those things. Yeah, so it's cool to see, like, it's just a slightly different take, but it's still, you look at it out of the package, it walks just like you would think any other Super Spook or a Hedden would. So yeah, staying true to that lineage of Hedden while coming out with some new products. That's got to be a tough thing just in general. It's probably, maybe not, but I would think it would be easier to come out with new products with a company that is current or, doesn't have as many guardrails on it or doesn't have as much rich history, I guess, because you do have to be protective of that image that's been around for decades and decades and decades. And you can't come out with something that looks like it should be in the, Booyah lineup under Hedden because it just looks so out of place. So sometimes you probably do have a fun challenge there of finding something new that still looks like it belongs within this family.
Yeah, we do. There'll be times when we develop a product and it's set for a certain brand, and we look at it and we're like, well, this is going to fit in a Booyah versus a Hedden, and it will resonate with that consumer in Booyah and not with Hedden. So we make that decision, and it may be unfortunate for that brand manager because he might have just had the next big thing, but we have to look at how's it going to work best for the company as a whole, not necessarily for the brand, but how's it going to work best for the company as a whole.
So here's a fun one then, because we just talked about the spinnerbait project that you did with Jason Christie and all of that. You also have another brand that makes probably my favorite spinnerbaits ever, and it's War Eagle. Like, I'm a War Eagle homer through and through. I love War Eagle spinnerbaits. So how do you balance like a War Eagle who specializes in all of these, great, simple, just fish catching machine spinnerbaits with some of your other brands like a Booyah and those type of things that are still new and coming out with new products that might compete with some of those?
Yeah, we're very strategic in positioning those two brands in two different ways. So as you're familiar with War Eagle, it was developed in the Ozarks in Northwest Arkansas around Beaver Lake. So it is a true Highland reservoir spinnerbait. Their iconic spinnerbait, the Screaming Eagle, the one that put them on the map. It's built for burning. And if you look at their colors, really what War Eagle has done a tremendous job at creating colors that were built for clean, clear water, and hence Beaver Lake. And do they dabble a little bit in, say, a River Rat series where they have some orange kickers, some of that other stuff? Yes. And so, but we still, and will continue to position War Eagle as a Highland Clearwater spinnerbait.
Okay.
Now, where you look at Booyah, where we position that is a dirty water spinnerbait. Because if you look at the majority of, we'll say the covert, the majority of those they're single Colorado, double Colorado, white chartreuse, orange heads, orange kickers. They're built for dirty, cold water. And then the other the Blade series in Booyah, most of those are really built for a river situation too. So that's how we, differentiate those two spinnerbait brands. You'll have a little bit of crossover because, like you'll find diehard War Eagle fans that love the Hammered series or they love the River Rat series, and they're like, "Dude, you need this color in the River Rat or this color in the River Rat." So there'll be a little bit of crossover, but we found that I think it's probably true for any brand that when you get a person that really likes a brand, like they will basically stick to that brand. I mean, they become a diehard, supporter of that brand, which we love. And most folks won't cross over. If you were going to go to the river and it was dirty, you're like, I'm probably going to get a River Rat, because I trust War Eagle. I know it catches fish. It's a quality bait, produces in clear water. So why wouldn't it produce in dirty water?
So with some of these brands, then, the one thing that sometimes you see with like when a brand gets acquired or, becomes part of this bigger parent company, you will see like rebrands from time to time. And it's like, there's some parent companies that do that more than others. We won't throw anybody under the bus, but there are some more recent ones that do that a lot. You have so much history with some of these brands. Is there ever a moment where you look at one of these legacy brands and you say, it is time for a revamp and it is time for a rebrand? Or is that just like sacrilegious, off the table? We're never going to like modernize and completely overhaul some of these like decades and decades old brands?
Yeah, we do all the time, actually, but we try to keep it as subtle as possible. We don't want the consumer to think that we're dramatically changing the quality and the product and the product that they love and they've grown to trust over years. So we're very, very conscious about how we make those adjustments. We did one for Hedden recently, and it was just a simple packaging change. And we transitioned away from, a green and a taupe color with lines and bars. And we went to a more clean white cover with typography. And what it did is it made the Hedden logo stand out even better on the peg. It pulls that consumer in and makes them want to purchase. And so those are some of the subtle things that we do. You'll never see us buy a brand or acquire a brand and do a total rehaul right off the bat. We'll never do that. We always, and since I have been there, I've always maintained that, look, when we purchase a brand, we're going to basically recreate and duplicate everything that this previous owner was doing. We're not going to change anything. We want to ensure to the consumer that we're making the same high quality product that they have either used or known for ever since they've been a purchaser or a consumer of that brand. So yeah, when we do some changes, in which they're very, very subtle. Never will we do something extreme or drastic.
So that applies to most of the brands that you have. But I think if I understand this right, I think you guys have acquired a lot of companies over the years, but there are a couple that you didn't acquire that I think just kind of were bred from the PRADCO family and just started yourself, right? If I understand right, I think Yum was 2002, probably somewhere around there.
2002. Yeah, okay. 2002 was an organic brand.
And then Booyah was a couple years later that you guys came out with. So you have like these in-house brand is not the right word, but you have a brand that you started that you did not acquire from someone or, purchase from somebody else. And a lot of these parent companies now, they solely just exist to buy pre-existing brands and they don't develop their own internal brands. Is that a whole different beast, a whole different animal to manage and product development, all that kind of stuff for a Booyah or a Yum versus some of these other brands that have pre-existing standards and things that just were there before you got involved?
Yeah. When we have an organic brand and start that, I haven't been involved in that. So I really couldn't tell you the difference. But at the end of the day, when you start one, I would think that it would be harder to start a brand, especially now with the amount of competition and competitors that are within the market. It would be extremely hard to start a brand. Tell you one that caught my eye back in 2023 was Great Lakes Finesse. That was started by Dan Miguel. I knew Dan from MPS, and Dan, it was 2023 and ICAST. No, it was 2022 maybe ICAST. Dan had literally just started. I saw a couple Facebook posts of him talking about the smallmouth brand. And he come past the booth at ICAST, and Dan, we were partners with Dan at MPS. He come rolling by the booth, and I was like, "Hey, Dan, come here." He comes by, I was like, "Hey, Chad, what's going on, man? How's things going? Good, blah, blah, blah." And I was just straight up, man, Andrew, I was like, "Dude, what's this Great Lakes Finesse I see you posting about?" And his eyes got real big, like silver dollars, dude. And he looked at me, and instantly he was like, Is that a problem? Is that like a competing brand?" He's like, "Is it interfering with our partnership?" And I'm like, "No, dude." I'm like, "It's awesome. I was planning to do something like that with Yum, but I see you posting this stuff. I want to know about the brand." So we sat down at the table at ICAST. He tells me about the brand. And Andrew, like, I knew where it was going to go. I just straight up looked at him right there. I'm like, "You want to sell it?" And again, he was like, he just looked at me like a deer in the headlights, and he was like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "100%." I was like, "We want to buy it. I want to buy it." And he's like, "Are you serious right now?" And I was like, "Yeah, dude, we want to buy it. I know what the potential is going to be with this brand. And like, if you need help with this, dude, we can help you." And he was like, "Dude, Chad, I don't even know what to say right now." And I'm like, "You don't have to tell me now." I'm like, "Just think about it, man. No pressure. Obviously, no pressure at all. Just think about it." And he was like, "Okay, okay." He's like, "Okay." He's like, "Let me go back and talk to Braden," because Braden was his business partner. And he's like, "Let me go talk to Braden." I'm like, "Take your time, dude. Just know that I'm interested. We at Pradco are interested." I'm like, "We can help you take this brand to the next level." So we leave ICAST. He calls me like later that month, and he was like, "Were you serious about that, man? When you threw that out there, you want to buy it?" I'm like, "100%. I'm serious." He's like, "Braden's interested. Let's do it." I'm like, "Are you serious?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Okay, let's start working on it." So that for us was one of those brands that almost organic, but I knew we could help Dan. I knew Dan from a business perspective. I knew what kind of person Dan was. I knew his work ethic working with him from MPS. I knew he was an excellent fisherman, an excellent, I mean, unbelievable smallmouth fisherman. He knew that market. That's a market where we weren't in, and it made sense for us. And I knew what was about to happen with that smallmouth fishery up there, whether it is Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, the St. Lawrence River. I mean, I could go down the list. I knew what was going to happen, and I wanted our brand, our company to have part in that. And so that was, I think we inked the deal in 2023, and the rest is history, man.
Yeah, we had Dan on. I feel like it probably would have been maybe a year before that. And watching that, yeah, I mean, real early on, I can remember the very first time I saw Great Lakes Finesse package of baits. This was probably 2021, 2022. This is
Yep.
pretty early on.
Yep.
And it was just a little retailer, Hamilton Bait and Tackle, that's here in like Southern Ohio. They were at one of the expos, and just on one of the little corner shelves at an expo, they had these black and red packages on it. And I saw the snack crawl for the first time.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
I clocked it just a mile away. I was like, never seen that before. The matte finish on it, just super tiny,
Yes.
do nothing claws, but just that profile that you want. And then I saw their, what would it have been, their flat cat, maybe something like that.
Flat
That
cat,
was,
yep.
yeah, that was in there. And I was like, this stuff is cool. And I bought it back in the OG packaging and everything. And then watching that brand just, ascend over the past 5 years or so has been so cool. And that seems like something that's kind of out of the ordinary for you all at Pradco. Like, you're not going around chasing brands. It doesn't seem like. You seem like you probably have a pretty good eye, and you're like, when I see something that feels like the right fit, then we will jump on it. But we're not out there just trying to acquire every single mom and pop, lure company under the sun to build a portfolio. We have a pretty comfortable family of brands right now, but then when one fits, we can bring it in. So with Dan's a good example. You have a great brand that he's already built. You purchase or acquire Dan, or however that works on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
And then Dan's still involved. Like, Dan is still Great Lakes Finesse to this day. He's still developing things. He's still there very much at the helm. Is that the norm? Is it the norm to have a company join, you like Pradco, and then the face of that company stays with it? Or a lot of times is it the opposite, where they say, hey, I'm getting out, I'm retiring, I'm done and ready to move on with another phase of life, and I'm actually not going to be a part of this moving forward?
And it's actually both ways. With Dan's instance, it was a requirement for me. I just told him straight up. I said, "Look, man," I said, "I don't want to do this deal unless you come with it. Like, you have the knowledge, you have the brand identity, you understand the brand. You have to be the one to grow it." And Dan wouldn't have had it any other way either. Dan said, "If we do this deal, I have to be a part of it. I want to continue to run the brand. I want to continue to do product development." So this was a perfect marriage where Dan needed some assistance, helping him grow the brand. He needed some help from a connection perspective, from a distribution, from a scaling perspective, from a product development perspective, because most people don't know this, but we at Pradco in Fort Smith, we have a fully functioning tool room where we do all of our tooling, all of our prototyping. There's nothing that we bring to market that doesn't start in Fort Smith. period. And so we were able to take these tools and these skills that we have at Pradco and help Dan grow his brand to where it is now, like 3-4 years later. And that's the exciting thing for me, is that Dan's a true entrepreneur. And like you mentioned, Bruce, we're not out there just looking to gobble up every brand that's available for sale. We probably, honestly, Andrew, turn down or pass on more brands than we purchase. I mean, it's not even close, actually. So it has to make sense for us. It has to make sense for the seller or the person that currently owns the brand. We want both parties to be happy and both parties to be successful. So it has to line up with us, with our core values and ethics. It has to make sense within our portfolio. There's so many things that we look at other than just saying, oh, let's go buy War Eagle. Or, oh, let's go buy Bobby Garland. It doesn't work like that, So that's, for me, that's one of the most important things. Is it going to be successful for us? And then is it going to be successful for the seller? Because we want them to be happy, whether or not they're a part of the brand continuing or they have an exit strategy. Like I'll use Keith Brashears at War Eagle. When we purchased War Eagle in 2017, Keith was like, Chad, I'm ready to retire, man. I'm tired of making spinnerbaits. Like, I want you guys to buy it. I'm like, well, okay, let's do this deal. And he stayed on for a consultant for about 2 years. His consulting, and I hope he watches this, his consulting was fishing. So he consulted for 2 years and he rode off into the sunset, and now he's living his best life. He's fishing tournaments and just hanging out, doing what he wants to do. So that made him happy. It worked out for us as well. So that's kind of how we look at the acquisition piece.
Well, and one of the reasons I wanted to do this mini series was to show the benefits from both the company side and from the angler side at the end of the day for these bigger companies existing, because it is a lot of times we're sour grapes. A lot of the time we complain about everything. There's so many good things that people like Pradco are doing. And, Dan's a great example from like the company side. You mentioned a couple of them. When you join someone like a Pradco, you get, the branding, you get connections, you get distribution, you get prototyping. One of the things I think we forget sometimes is like you get purchase power. Like every one of those Great Lakes finesse, that you just came out with the new spy baits. Every one of those needs hooks. And guess what? If you're Pradco, you can buy hooks for a lot cheaper than if you were just doing it on your own. You can flex your muscles a little bit. And then what happens? If you're saving cost for the production of that lure, then at the end of the day, you're saving costs for the consumer. Like you're able to produce that product cheaper, which means when I go to the store, it's not, $15.99, it's $12.99 because you have more purchasing power to get the hooks, the split rings, the paint, the tooling, you can order in more bulk, you can do more inventory at a time, cash flow is better. Like all of those things I think sometimes we overlook, but all of that trickles down to a consumer.
Yeah, we passed that. We're able to create value for the consumer in that situation from purchasing a brand. We're able to provide a product to them that sometimes could be a better quality product and at a fairer price just because of those things that you mentioned, and it is unfortunate at times that there's folks out there that will call out, all these brands are buying up every little mom and pop, and that's not the intent. The intent is to ensure that they're successful within the partnership as well. And we want obviously at Pradco, we want to make a quality product. We want to make the best product that we possibly can because we want you, Andrew, we want all the end users to come back and repurchase. And obviously, catch a fish. That's the most important thing, is that when you go out and you go fishing, we want you to be able to catch a fish. And man, I feel like you can catch fish with our baits, period.
Yeah. There's very few instances where someone like you is going to purchase a company and it's not a great thing for that company. Like either the War Eagle is a great example. Someone is about to want to just retire. Okay, your alternative is there's no more War Eagle. War Eagle is gone. Your favorite spinnerbait is no longer made because the person wants to retire. I would much rather War Eagle continue to be made. And oh, by the way, continue to be made by someone who does have that purchasing power and that amount of resources to not only continue to make it, but to continue to make it at an affordable price and continue to R&D things and have the infrastructure to take care of that brand, or someone like a smaller company that gets acquired because now you can take them to the next level. I would have never had, Great Lakes Finesse in my local tackle shop if they hadn't got the distribution through a bigger company. So I think there's so many instances. There's very few times where you're purchasing a brand and then that brand is really salty about it. Everybody who uses that brand is salty about it and you ruin the product. That doesn't happen.
Yeah. The last thing we want to do is put, when we purchase a brand, is do anything that is detrimental or would hurt that brand. That's why I am adamant when we purchase a brand like War Eagle, for example. Man, we use the same wire. We purchase this from the same place. We use the same skirt material. We use the same O'Shaughnessy hook that he bought. Yeah. We use the same sample swivel. Like, we use the same stuff. It's imperative that you do that. Now, over time, will there be changes? 100%, because you have all these variables. They may stop making a blade in this size. They may stop making this wire. They may change the wire form. They may change a skirt formula. These things are going to change, and you're going to see that throughout every brand. That's not uncommon to see those changes, but we want to stay as authentic as possible. And there are times where the consumer will get upset. And I'll use War Eagle, for example. Like War Eagle, we had to carve down that SKU selection. I'm not going to sit here and say that we didn't, because we did. We had to, because we can't run an operation efficiently as Keith did on a small scale as we do on a big scale. So we had to carve some of those some of those SKUs, dude, he weren't even selling 6 a year. 6 pieces a year, but that one color, that 1/6 was this one dude's favorite color, and we killed it. I'm like, man, if you loved it that much, you should have bought more 6 pieces. Yeah. So there are some instances like that where it happens, but at the end of the day, it's smart business.
Yeah. So this might be a little bit like asking you to pick like your favorite kid or something, but of all the brands that you oversee right now under that PRADCO umbrella, which one are you most excited for at the moment? Like, maybe that means what's on the horizon for it. Maybe, just something that's got you fired up. Is there one brand in particular that you are very excited, like, May 2026 about?
This is a hard question. I'm GLF, Great Lakes Finesse, is kind of special to me because, I was able to identify what Dan was doing, bring that to the company. The partnership has been unbelievable. Dan's doing he has brought awesome stuff. He is going to continue to bring awesome stuff. I'm really happy where we're at with Yum. Yum, that brand is growing. You're going to see some cool stuff coming from it that this ICAST. Another one, we talked about some of the heritage brands. Hedden, you're going to see some really cool stuff coming from that brand that you're like, dang, Hedden's stepping up their game. Yeah. So is there one band? If I were to pick one, I would probably say GLF, just because of, it started, Dan and I had a really good relationship from a business perspective. And, we were able to work through, a pretty challenging negotiating piece, continue with that brand, and the growth that is seen has been tremendous. So that one for me, if I would just say I had a favorite, it's hard to say that it wouldn't be my favorite. Yeah.
Well, I'll end us here with a couple like big picture questions. So now you've been at PRADCO for, over 10 years or so, yeah, and you've managed all of these brands. What sets PRADCO apart from the other giant parent companies in the industry? So like your Pure Fishings, your GSMs, Rather Outdoors, Rapala VMC, like those type of people. In your opinion, what makes PRADCO special?
It's a loaded question, man. I think our culture, at the end of the day, we're a small company. People think of PRADCO and they're like, oh, you guys are big. Not really, man. We've just got a couple, 2 or 3 engineers. We've got a small brand team. We've got a small pro staff. We've got 5 pro staff on our team. We're really a small company. And each person wears multiple hats. And our culture is more of a family culture. We're about ethics. We're about values and morals, making sure that the people that we hire and employ line up with those ethics and values. And so I'm not saying that these other companies don't, because I don't know their culture, but I can only speak for ours. And that's the way we live. And that's just the way we do business. You'll never see us do anything that's questionable from a business perspective. That's not the way we run the operation, so that sets us apart. And I think that we've tried very hard, Andrew, to keep our prices fair and affordable, all of our products affordable to the ending consumer. It was important for us because we want people to be able to experience fishing and the joys of fishing and what it brings, and not look at it as, man, they're pricing us out of doing something that we love. That's important. That's important for us at the end of the day. So I think those two things, I think that's what separates us from our competitors.
Yeah. I mean, the affordability piece is an important piece right now. Is like, gas is $5.50 a gallon. Like, everything is so expensive. And you called out Yum a second ago. Like, you're excited for what's coming out from Yum. That's the epitome of Yum. Yum is the epitome of like every, your 10-year-old can buy Yum with their allowance.
Yes.
Like, they're riding their bike to Walmart and getting, Christy Craws and going out to the creek and catching fish with them. Like, that's Yum to a T, and that's awesome to see. I'm excited that there's new stuff coming, and we can get a little pumped for that. But I mean, I do think that's going to be more and more and more important as the years go by, because everything is going up in price. Inflation is crazy. Your overseas stuff is going nuts at the time. I'm sure you've seen what's going on with like tungsten and stuff right now. Like, it's pricing people out of the gear that they have used for years and years and years. And if you can not only keep your prices affordable, which you guys do a very good job of, but also develop new products that come out at an affordable price. Like, you're not coming out with something and now it's something just completely different. It's a $25, thing that's so off brand for you all. That's not what you guys do. So I think that's what I do really appreciate. I can go get a Rebel Pop R and I can afford to, get a couple poppers. I don't have to pay $25, $26 for, every single bait that I buy. So I do like that. And I think that's important, not just to me, but to regular Joes that are listening that, fish on the weekends, just your weekend warrior that has a decent job and wants to go enjoy time with themselves or with their kids. Like, that is a lot of the PRADCO brands to a T for me.
Yeah, that's where we want to live. We want to support everybody that wants to get out on the water and fish.
Well, we appreciate you for joining us. We're really excited, obviously, for the new stuff that'll be coming out in a couple months, and we'll keep an eye out for, and we're excited for it.
Right on, Andrew. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Chad. All right, everybody. That is episode 3 of the Big 4 here at Tackle Talk. Thank you to Chad for coming on and shedding some light on everything PRADCO. I really did enjoy this one because, like I said, PRADCO is very unique in their own ways with the rich history and, like I said, the more mature brands that they manage and a lot of sort of timeless products that they have to be, the guards of, while also juggling brands that try to keep up with more modern tackle trends and offerings and really doing a good job of keeping both of those worlds going at the same time. So a very cool peek into PRADCO, and we appreciate Chad for stopping by. And with that, I will let you all go for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Next week, we officially wrap up this mini-series with episode 4, as we are joined by Nathan Ragsdale and Mark Sexton, both from Pure Fishing. So get ready for that. But in the meantime, if you have any questions or anything we can help with, shoot us an email, tackletalkpodcast@gmail.com. You can send us a DM or a message over on Instagram or Facebook. You can find us at Tackle Talk Podcast on both of those platforms. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a review. That helps us a ton. And we will see you right back here next Tuesday for episode 4 of the Big 4, right here on the Tackle Talk Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Tackle Talk Podcast. Tackle Talk is produced by Andrew Hayes. Copyright 2019. For more, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.